So welcome to your first video lesson in physics on simple conversions. In this lesson I will take you through the process on how to solve simple conversions, with the main goal is that after watching this video you should be able to perform these simple conversions on your own. So let's get started. So when performing a simple conversion, all you really are doing is trying to get units to cancel out. This is very similar to algebra. When you have a fraction where you have something in the numerator and the denominator, what you're trying to do is simplify things. So with unit cancellations, you are simply trying to get things to cancel out such that when it simplifies out, you're left with whatever desired units you have. Okay? So if we look at this example here of 2 pi r divided by 2r, think algebra. Something in the numerator and denominator that are common tend to cancel out. Okay, so in this problem we have both the 2's in the numerator and denominator that are common, as well as the r's. So if I were to simplify this, the 2's cancel out, the r's cancel out, and what I am left with is simply pi. Okay, so what we're going to be doing with unit cancellation is simply this. We're going to be taking two things and either multiplying or dividing them such that our end product is going to be whatever desired unit we want. So with unit cancellations, again, what you're going to be trying to do is go from one unit to the next. All right. So a simple conversion, we're usually going to stay within the same system of units. So maybe going from meters to kilometers, or in this example that we're going to do, centimeters to kilometers. So what you always want to do is you want to start with what you know. Start with what you are given in the problem. So if I want to go from 500 centimeters to kilometers, I am going to start with 500 centimeters. And I'm going to try and convert then units. I'm going to try and convert centimeters to kilometers. Alright? So there are really two ways you can do this. I'm going to show you two methods. They're really the same thing. But the key thing for unit cancellation, for simple conversions, and when we get to complex conversions and dimensional analysis, is to organize your work. Really, any problem that we do in this class, you're really going to need to organize your work in a neat fashion such that things will make sense in the end. Alright? So, this first system is basically a bracket system. Okay? It almost fills up in like a matrix. Alright? So on the left side here, I'm starting with what I am given, 500 centimeters. I'm going to place that on the very left side. And what I'm going to try and do is get my units to cancel out. Okay, so I start off with 500 centimeters. So my goal is to get rid of centimeters, and I want to convert it to kilometers. Okay, so I need to get rid of centimeters and go to kilometers. Now, just like the previous problem that we looked at, a simple problem like 2 pi r over 2r. Okay, if I want, let's say I want to get rid of r. If I want to get rid of something, what I need to do is I need to make sure that I have it both in the numerator and denominator, because when you have those two things, they cancel out. So, if I start off with centimeters and I want to go to kilometers, the first thing I want to do is get rid of centimeters. Now, the key thing here, when getting rid of centimeters and trying to go to a different unit, one of the main things you want to do is try and get to the base unit. Okay. Now we talked about the metric system, and depending on what we're looking at, whether we're talking about length in meters, time in seconds, or mass, which would be grams, we always want to get to that base unit. Okay. In this case, we're dealing with meters, so our base unit is going to be the meter. So the first thing I want to do, this is the easiest thing, is to go from centimeters to meters. Okay, so this is where you want to pull out the chart you grabbed in class. Okay, so when going from centimeters to meters, there's two ways you can look at it. You can use the chart. Another way to think about it, okay, centimeters and meters, which one is a bigger unit? Okay, you have a meter stick that has centimeters within that. So obviously a meter is a bigger unit than a centimeters. So how many centimeters are in a meter? Well, using your chart, you should see that 100 centimeters equal 1 meter. Alright? So this chart I've had kind of have it filled out for you. Kind of the path to go is there. Okay, and then we're going to try some on our own. So what happens now, I have 500 centimeters times, this is showing it's times 1 meter divided by 100 centimeters. And just like this problem here, if I have both centimeters in the numerator and denominator, just like R or just like 2, these things cancel out. Okay? So because I am cross multiplying, centimeters are both in the numerator, denominator, they cancel out. And what I'm left with now, if I just look at what I have 500 divided by 100, and the only unit I have left right now is meters. Okay? So if you do the math right here quickly, that would give you 5 meters. Okay? But remember, our goal is to get to kilometers. So I need to do one more step. So I'm going to now go from meters to kilometers. Okay, so again, if I want to get rid of the meters, what I need to do, if it's in the numerator, I need to put it in the denominator to make sure it cancels out. Now I'm going to kilometers. So again, think to yourself or use your chart, which one is a bigger unit? Okay. Sometimes, if you think of like Europe, they use, instead of miles like we use, they use kilometers. Okay? So if you think kilometers versus meters, a kilometer is a much bigger unit than a meter. Okay? So if that's the case, then there's going to be more meters in a kilometer, and not vice versa. Okay? So how many meters are in a kilometer? Well, a kilo represents 1,000. So there's going to be 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. Okay, so I filled that out. Now looking at my units, what now I'm allowed to do is take those meters and they cancel out. And the unit that I am now left with is kilometers. Okay, so now I have solved the problem, and the last thing to do is to do the math. So with simple conversions and doing the math, all you do is basically follow this pattern from left to right, and you do the math as you go along. So starting with 500, I first have to, or you can look at it two ways, times 1 over 100, or it's 500 divided by 100. Okay, so I'm going to do that right away. If you just take it simply, the zeros would cancel out and I'd be left with 5. Now, what happens is I look at this 5 meters divided by 1,000. Okay, and that should give me then 0.005, and then my units of kilometers. And there's my answer. Okay? So all simple conversion, just going from one unit to the next. What we're trying to do again is to get these things to cancel out. Alright? Okay, the other process to solve this type of problem is really the same thing, just another form. This is using just brackets or parentheses to separate your work. Again, the key thing here is to organize your work to make sure that it's all nice and neat so that you can see what's going on. Okay, so really it's the same thing as the matrix or the grid system we just used. This is just using parentheses. Doesn't matter whichever one you're comfortable with, that's the one you can use. I actually prefer this one, so I'm going to use this one. Okay, so we can go through the same process. Start off with 500 centimeters. Alright, I want to get rid of centimeters, so I need to divide by centimeters, and I'm going to convert it to my base unit. Okay, doing the math, there's 100 centimeters in 1 meter. Alright, these would cancel out to equal 5 if we did the math right away. And then going from meters to kilometers, okay, again I have meters in the numerator. I want to get it put in the denominator to get rid of it, and then we're going to our goal, which is kilometers. So again, doing that, there's 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer, and then that's going to give me my answer again like we just did, 0.005 kilometers. So again, both these things are really the same process, just a different way of representing it. Quickly going through this, in class you should have picked up this chart of common conversions. Okay, one of the things we're mainly going to use in this class are simple metric conversions. We are going to use the metric system instead of the US system. So this is a chart that you're going to have to really get used to. Okay, but as we go through simple conversions, complex conversions, we also have some other different conversions that we use, such as US conversions, like foot to inches, yards to feet, and vice versa. Okay, notice all these things are broken down into really some of the base dimensions we can have of length, volume, and mass. Okay, and then down here in the bottom is really the key or most important thing that we're going to use when doing these conversions. Is sometimes you may have to go from one system to the next. Okay, we talked about the importance of having a single system of units such that all our measurements can correspond. Well, we still have the US system. we have the metric system, so we need some conversions between the two, because sometimes we may need to go from feet to meters, or gallons to liters, or pounds to kilograms. Okay, so this chart down here with US to metric conversions is also very important because it allows us to go from one system to the next. So now that we know the process of solving simple conversion, let's try a few examples. So the first example, we are going from 0.75 miles, and I want to convert that to inches. All right. Now with these problems, when you are staying within a system of measurements, so in this case we're staying within the US system when going from miles to inches, that's really a simple conversion. All right. So that's the same as going from a metric conversion, going from meters to kilometers or something like that. Usually when we cross over, if I want to go from miles to centimeters, that's we're going to find out is a more complex conversion. All right, so this one should be pretty easy for some of you. Okay, so I'm going to start off, like I said, with what I'm given, 0.75 miles, and I'm going to convert this to inches. Now there is, but you'd have to research it, a direct conversion from miles to inches. So this may take a little more than just one step. Okay, so 0.75 miles is what I'm starting with, and I want to get rid of miles, and I'm going to convert it into something a little easier to use to get to inches. Okay, one of the common conversions people know is miles to feet, so let's use that one. And this is also on your chart. If you're not sure where to go, look at your chart under the US conversions. And we're looking, obviously, miles is a length, so we're looking at units of length. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from miles to feet. Okay, simple conversion that most of you probably should know. All right, now if you think of that, a foot is far less than a mile. There's going to be more feet in a mile. So miles, let's think 1 mile, there's going to be 5,280 feet. Okay, what this is allowing me to do now is that if you look at miles, I have miles in the numerator and denominator, and what happens is that these things cancel out. And now what I've done is I've converted miles to feet. And then the next thing I'm going to do, now that I know feet, is a simple conversion to go to inches. So if I want to get rid of feet, it's in the numerator, I need to put feet in the denominator, and inches is what my goal is up in the numerator. Now inches to foot, everyone should know this, there's 12 inches in 1 foot. Feet cancel out because you have them both in the numerator and denominator, and what I'm left with is inches. So now punching this into your calculator, the way you should do it is you have all your numbers in the numerator. Now think fractions. When multiplying fractions, all the numerators multiply together, all the denominators multiply together. Okay, so this is really 0.75 over 1. So I have 0.75 times 5,280 times 12, and then my denominators are all 1, so I'm dividing by 1. Punching that in your calculator, you should get the answer of 47,520 inches. Okay, so that is converting from miles to inches, and hopefully this number should make sense to you. Inches are far less than the miles, so there should be a ton of inches in 0.75 miles, which in this case there's 47,520 inches in 0.75 miles. Alright, now let's also look at going from the second example now, going from a metric conversion to another one. So here I'm going from kilometers to millimeters. Same process. I'm going to start with what I'm given, 5 kilometers, and I'm going to convert to millimeters. Okay, so starting with what I'm given, I want to go from kilometers first to this. Now, the easiest thing to do with the metric system is it's kind of tough to think about how many millimeters would be in a kilometer. So what you should always do when given the metric system or given any one of these prefixes like we talked about is to go to the base unit. And since we're dealing with length, the base unit is a meter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with kilometers, and I'm going to try and convert kilometers to meters. I'm going to go to the base unit because then once I'm at the base unit, then it's easier to go to one of the other ones. Okay, so kilometers, meter, which one is bigger? Kilometer is far greater than a meter. Kilo stands for 1,000. So there is 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. this conversion allows me to cancel out kilometers, leaving me simply with meters. My goal then is to get to millimeters. So once I'm at meters, I can now cancel out the meters and get to millimeters. Okay, so which one's bigger? Well, a meter is far bigger than a millimeter. Okay, milli stands for 1/1000th. Okay, so within 1 meter, there are 1,000 millimeters. This allows me to cancel out the meters, and multiplying this across now, I am given 5 times 1,000 times 1,000. I have ones in every denominator, so it's just a multiplication problem. So 5 times 1,000 times 1,000 is going to give you 5 million millimeters. Okay, again, does this make sense? And it should, because kilometers are far greater than millimeters, so you should have a lot of millimeters in 5 kilometers. Alright, let's try one last problem here. We have 2,000 milliliters and we are going to gallons. Okay, now this one's a little more complex than what we were talking about before. Why, you may ask, is because we are going from milliliters, which if you look at your chart is a metric measurement of volume, and going from gallons, which is a US measurement of volume. So what we are doing is now crossing over from the metric system to the US system. So this is a little more complicated. Process is the same. Start with what we're given. 2,000 milliliters. Alright, and I want to get to gallons. Now, just like we did before, okay, with the metric system, is getting to a base unit. Alright, this time I'm going to try and get to kind of a similar process. And what I told you before is that the most important thing on your chart is the US to metric conversion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at that chart and I'm going to look under volume. I'm dealing with a volume conversion. Okay, so on your chart you should notice that you have 1 gallon is equal to 3.78 liters. Okay, so that being said, I need to, if I know that the conversion goes from gallons to liters, or liters to gallons, I need to convert milliliters to liters. So I'm going to do that first. Okay, so here I want to get rid of milliliters, and my conversion goes from liters to gallons. So I'm going to get rid of milliliters and go to liters. Okay, so what's bigger? Well, a milliliter is much, much smaller than a liter. Okay, so milli stands for 1/1000th. So there's 1,000 milliliters in 1 liter. This then cancels out the milliliters and now leaves me with liters. And now using that chart from the US to metric, looking at your chart, I know that 1 gallon is equal to 3.78 liters. Liters, since it's in the numerator up here, needs to cancel out by putting it in the denominator, and I'm going to go from liters here to gallons. Okay, and the conversion is 1 gallon is 3.78 liters. That's going to allow then liters to cancel out, and that's going to leave me simply with gallons. So the key point here was to look at your conversions from US to metric, and that was going to be the key to help you to solve this problem. And when you do this now, okay, now notice you have all your bigger numbers in the denominator. So to solve this, you're going to start with 2,000. Okay, 2,000's in the numerator, 1,000's in the denominator. Okay, now we are going to divide these across. So wait, there's 2 ways to look at it. You can take 2,000 times 1 times 1 divided by 1,000 divided by 3.78. Or do it in steps. 2,000 divided by 1,000. Take that answer divided by 3.78. Both processes should give you the same answer. And the answer you should get is 0.5291, or I'll just round it up to 0.53 gallons. And this simple conversion was an example of going from the metric to US system. That concludes our lesson here on simple conversions. Tomorrow we will focus primarily on complex conversions and start dabbing into dimensional analysis.